Metafiction is a literary device that has recently gained popularity, particularly in children's literature. It has, however, not been limited to children's literature. Take, for example, the recent blockbuster movie and Marvel comic book, Deadpool. This teen phenomenon is known for its use of metafictive humor, although many may not be able to pinpoint or name that this is a literary device in use. Metafiction is literature that uses unusual or experimental devices that are often seen as disruptions to traditional stories. These disruptive techniques vary from characters talking directly to readers to the breaking of linear sequential storylines. It can include gaps in text and the use of unfamiliar visuals and text styles. It can be as though the characters are walking right out of the story. There's been some considerable debate whether this type of literature is postmodern, with many researchers and educators sitting on either side of the argument. Although the technique and use of metafiction has grown in popularity with drastic changes and steps forward in recent years, there is no denying that some metafictive devices have been used by authors for many centuries. Pantaleo stated in one of her articles that examples of metafiction have existed since the beginning of literary publishing. Postmodernism is not a new phenomenon, but a continuation of what book artists have been doing for centuries. Take, for example, C.S. Lewis's famous Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There are several times throughout the novel that the author acknowledges or becomes aware of the reader. Lewis goes as far as to, in the middle of the story, directly address the reader. This notion that the narrator can step outside of a story and directly speak with the reader is one example of how metafiction began to be used long before the notion of the postmodern book came about. To look further into the recent rise of metafiction and what it means for modern children's literature and educators, we will look at the devices used in the children's book You're Finally Here by Melanie Watt. This author has embraced and mastered the genre of metafiction and has published a number of works, including the recently popular Chester series. The use of metafictive devices can be seen right on the cover. The unusual design and disruption of space is obvious, with the main character breaking through the page in what seems like excitement. On page 2, the main character declares, "But where were you?" breaking the rules of traditional stories by addressing the reader of the story directly. Watt goes on to further disrupt the story by making the reader enter into the story itself, as seen on this page here, where the main character asks the reader to sign a contract, forcing the reader to become an active participant in the story. Soon after, a phone call to the main character causes disruption to both the storyline and the timeline. This leaves the reader waiting to continue the story until the character has finished talking on the phone. A final metafictive device used in You're Finally Here is the use of experimental typography. Although this device is used throughout this book, let's look at this page. The change in color, size, and font shows readers the excitement of the character and places emphasis otherwise not noted in many books. There are many reasons why educators are gravitating towards the use of metafiction literature and why their use within the classroom is becoming increasingly prevalent. First of all, metafiction creates active readers. To understand and engage in a story that uses metafictive devices takes effort and engagement from readers. Readers no longer can simply be passive listeners of stories. They must be participants and responders to what is happening. This matches our ever-increasing world and need for students to cope with and critically analyze the unexpected. Metafictive books create active readers who are able to interpret and engage in what they are reading. Secondly, metafiction allows and involves a higher level of thinking. Metafictive books cause readers to consider a multiple meaning and understand the structure and workings of a story on a deeper level in order to draw real meaning. Metafiction is a growing genre of literature that uses the unfamiliar to change a story in order to engage the reader in an active process that elicits and involves readers in a higher level of thinking and understanding of stories.